So today, we're going to talk about a parent-child dynamic that's really subtle but can leave some deep, deep scars. We're calling it the inadequate parent. We're going to get into how even the best intentions in the world can't just erase the hurt, and how that can create a legacy of pain that follows someone for their entire life.
And to really get our heads around the kind of impact we're talking about, we're going to start with a real, raw, and desperate plea for help. It was written by a young girl who felt completely and utterly trapped. This letter, it's from a 13-year-old girl named Melanie. It's just a few words, but wow, it says so much, doesn't it? You can feel the desperation just jumping off the page. A child's home is supposed to be a safe place, but for her, it felt like a prison. This one little plea is really at the heart of everything we're going to unpack today. Now, that plea from Melanie, it's more than just a heartbreaking story. It's actually a window into a recognized psychological dynamic. So what do you call it when a parent pushes their child to a point of such complete despair? Well, there's a term for it. Let's define it.
Okay, so here's the deal. The inadequate parent is so consumed by their own problems, often their own unhealed wounds from childhood or mental health struggles, that they completely flip the script. Instead of being the one giving emotional support, they demand it from their child. It's like their needs are always on the front burner, and the child's needs, they're not even on the stove.
Look, every parent has a job description, right? There are some fundamental duties. And sure, maybe the physical needs are being met. There's food on the table, a roof overhead. But it's the emotional side of the job where these parents fall down. They fail to provide that love, that attention, and that crucial protection from emotional harm that every kid desperately needs.
And what happens is this. It forces this total role reversal. I mean, the child has to grow up way too fast. They basically have to become their own parent, or sometimes even a parent to their own parent. And they have to do all of this without any kind of real role model to show them how. Childhood just gets sacrificed. When you grow up in a system like this, it usually pushes you down one of two paths. So let's take a look at these two outcomes, and we'll use a couple of real-life case studies, Les and Melanie, to show us the way.
So you get these two kind of classic outcomes. On one hand, you have the mini adult, like Les, who takes on all the family's burdens and basically gives up being a kid. And then on the other side, you've got the invisible child, like Melanie, who learns a really painful lesson. My needs, my feelings, they just don't matter. It's like they're not even there.
You can just hear the exhaustion in Les's voice, can't you? This is the anthem of the mini-adult. All your childhood, you're the responsible one, and that feeling doesn't just vanish when you grow up. For Les, it turned into workaholism, this constant, driving need to be in control, to fix things. Because as a kid, he learned his value didn't come from just being. It came from being useful. And Melanie's story, man, this one is just gut-wrenching. Her own mother found this desperate cry for help and said nothing. Just silence. Can you imagine? That silence sent the loudest message possible. Your pain doesn't matter. You don't matter. It is the absolute definition of emotional neglect. This stuff doesn't just go away when you turn 18. It casts a really long shadow. These childhood experiences, they don't just fade away. They go on to shape adult relationships in really deep and often really destructive ways. And the most common result of it all? This deep, nagging legacy of guilt. And that leads us straight to this idea of codependency. Remember how Melanie kept choosing partners who were, in her words, lazy bums or total bastards? That wasn't a coincidence. She was forced to be a caretaker as a child, so as an adult, she was unconsciously drawn to broken people she thought she could fix, just repeating that same painful pattern over and over again. Let's break down how this cycle actually works, because it's a vicious one. It all starts with the child being forced to be a caretaker. Then they take on this incredible guilt because, of course, a child can't fix an adult's problems. Then, as an adult, that guilt drives them to find new people to rescue. And in the end, they're just trapped in this same loop of emotional neglect they grew up in.
Listen to this. This is Melanie talking about her father. It just goes to show you, this guilt, it doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't fade with time. It doesn't even go away when the person is gone. That feeling of being responsible for your parents' happiness and feeling like you failed can become this permanent piece of who you are. Okay, so after seeing all of this pain, this destructive cycle of guilt, we get to what is maybe the most important takeaway from all of this. It's a message of, well, of freedom, really.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter.
Your parent might have been dealing with their own demons, depression, illness, maybe they were just completely overwhelmed. They probably didn't mean to cause any harm, but you know what? When it comes to the impact it had on you, their intent is irrelevant. The hurt is still real.
At the end of the day, the responsibility for a childhood lies with the parent, period. They are accountable for the things they did, and just as importantly, for the things they failed to do. The most important thing for you as the adult child is to finally let yourself put that burden down and realize that none of it, not one bit of it, was your fault.
So that leaves us with this one final question. It sounds so simple, but for anyone who has ever carried the weight of their parents' world on their shoulders, the answer is anything but. It's revolutionary. Who is actually responsible for a stolen childhood? Really thinking about that and internalizing the answer, that's not just some thought exercise. That's the first real step to healing and taking your own life back.